Hi, if you made the blanket with the Bernat Blanket Extra yarn, you'll have some left over. You'll have enough to make this pillow cover. It's Bernat Blanket Extra in crimson red, smoky green, and vintage white, and also Sheepy, the Bernat Sheepy in Cottontail for the border of the blanket. And that's what I used for the off-white stripes and the border in the pillow cover. Okay, today I'm going to make Christmas pillow cover. I had some leftover yarn of the jumbo Bernat Blanket Extra in the crimson red and smoky green. I didn't have enough of the vintage white to make anything, but I have the Sheepy in Cottontail that I used for the border of that blanket, the Christmas blanket. So this will have the same colors. All right, and I'm using a 15 millimeter hook. I did not care for the last hook that I used when I made my blanket. So I bought a set. I'll put a link in the description to this. It goes from 12 millimeter, 15 millimeter, 18, 20, 25. It's really large. I'm going to make a big blanket with that. And it comes with some little scissors and some stitch markers and some needles. So it's a pretty good deal. And a nice little case that everything goes back into. I'm going to use the 15 millimeter. That's what they suggest for this jumbo yarn. And all I'm going to do is chain. I'm making a 20-inch pillow cover, or pillow cover for a 20-inch form. And I just want to chain enough chains so that it's just about a couple of inches wider. So at about 22 inches wide. Normally I make it actually a little bit smaller so that it'll stretch and go over. Okay, so I chained 25 of the crimson red, and it's just a little bit wider than the 20-inch pillow form. This is going to be all single crochet. All we're going to do is come into the second chain, or from the hook, single crochet all the way across. It's really easy to find your chains. You can pretty much feel for them. Oh, I like this hook much, much better than that last one I used for the blanket. That was just what I happen to have on hand. I don't even know where I got it. But this is a lot smoother. It's just really cute. I like it. Don't worry that it's curling up on you. It'll straighten out when we keep going. So go all the way to the end. When you get to the end, chain one and come back with single crochets. We're going to have 4 rows of single crochets, and then I'll meet you at the end of row 4. All right, I'm at the end of row 4 of the crimson red. It's all single crochet, and I'm ready to join with my cottontail of the Bernat Sheepy. Now loop this around, and we're going to bring that in, and that's just going to be our chain 1. Turn. And find your very first loop there, first stitch. Go underneath the tails. We're just going to weave those in. Not weave them in, but just bring them along with us. You don't need to worry about weaving them in. if you want to, oh shoot, I've messed up. All right, I'm at the end of row 4 of the crimson red. It's all single crochet. And I'm ready to join with my Cottontail of the Bernat Sheepy. Now, loop this around. And we're going to bring that in, and that's just going to be our chain 1. Turn. Okay, I cut my red yarn. Let me find my working yarn. There's my tail. Here's my working yarn. Okay, so we're just going to bring those along. We're not going to weave them in, but you can go ahead and give them a tie, and you don't have to worry about it. But if you have any ends poking through, just put them through to the inside of the pillow cover and no one will ever see them. All right, there was our first single. Here's our first one. All right, go into the next stitch. Just keep bringing those along. And the next. All right, we can just drop those now. We're going to do 2 rows of the sheepy in between 4 rows of each of the other color. So continue along. When you get to the end of the row, isn't that cute? When you get to the end of the row, chain 1 and come back with another row of single crochet, and then we'll join with our smoky green. Right, at the end of row 2 of our Cottontail yarn, cut your tail, cut your cottontail, join with the smoky green. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and complete that stitch, and I'm going to use both the smoky green and the cottontail to make a chain because it's not too terribly thick. Turn, bring your tails to the inside, and we'll just work over those. Find your first single crochet right there. This is probably the hardest row to do because you have to feel for those stitches. Let's come through all of those. All right. If you want to, go ahead and count down and make sure you have the right number of stitches. But you see how it's a little thicker in between there? Just make sure, because sometimes you'll end up with too many stitches. All right. So there was my first one. Here's my second one. It's also kind of easy to go down into the first row instead of the second. So just kind of watch what you're doing so you don't have to go back and make any corrections. Okay, so we'll have 4 rows. Pull that in tighter. Don't worry about the edges because we're going to be coming back and sewing it all together with the sheepy. So your edges are all going to have this fluffy sheepy all along. So just don't really need to worry about much of anything on this. It's pretty easy. So 4 rows of the green, and then come back again with 2 rows of the sheepy, and then 4 rows of the red. And I'm going to keep going. I'll let you know how many rows we have of each to cover this pillow. All right, now remember I'm using the leftover yarn that I had from making the Christmas blanket. and I had exactly enough of the red to make 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of the 4 rows, and then the last row was 3 rows because I ran out. This is how much yarn I had left, but that's okay because the very first row actually has that extra chain row, so it'll work out fine. We're just going to be folding it over and putting it together. 4 rows or 4 sets of the 4 rows of the green, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 2 rows of oh, that's not vintage white. What is that? Cottontail and the Sheepy. And again, this is just all stuff that I had left over from the Christmas blanket. So if you bought the same kind of yarn and made that blanket, you'll have enough left to make this. I made it all in single crochets. It's different from the pattern in the from the blanket. Okay, I'm just going to fold it over. I will probably put a few buttons on it. So just make sure that you overlap just enough where the red overlaps the red, and you're just joining up again with that Cottontail Sheepy yarn. And we're going to come through and sew it. Lots of thickness to sew through. Let's see. You might want to just run this extra piece from the end all the way through. I'm switching over to a 10 millimeter now. Let's see. Just to keep me in line. I want to be just above this row of the Sheepy Cottontail. That Cottontail worked out really well. All right, so I'm just going to pull that through just to keep me nice and even there, so I know where I am. I'll weave in my weave in my tails a little bit later. They're going to be on the inside. We're actually, this is the outside, it is the right side. You'll be able to tell. It just actually ends up looking just a little bit nicer. Let me see. Let me take that off again. I want to show you. You know it's the right side. Because was your initial chain, and that's the tail from your initial chain, and it's on your left. So everything on this side is the right side, and that's what I want. So again, let me put this together. I want it to look like it's the same as the pattern, green and then Cottontail and then red. So on my hook, put it through just that tail, just to keep me on track. You're going to have this Cottontail should be right at the bottom, and again you'll have a little bit of Cottontail right at the top, and it works out perfectly. And when we'll just open up like an envelope and stick our pillow form inside, and this will stretch just enough to work with it. Okay, so take your time. Push this back. Take your time making sure that you have your edges even, your Cottontail on the top and the bottom. That's just going to kind of round out to the bottom. So you can join your 2 rows of Cottontail here. And we're just going to stitch on the outside with the Cottontail. Make myself a slip knot. With my 10mm hook and pull through those 2 rows. Make yourself a chain. Just kind of lock that in. And we're going to start going through all these thicknesses. Let's just start in that cottontail row. Just single crochets. That's all we need to do. Single crochets for this whole blanket. Now just find your edge. Try to match up the stitches. And a single crochet. Make sure you're keeping your rows even. There's not really a magic number of stitches. Just try to keep those edges even. And single crochet. Take your time. If you can, it's best to work through 2 stitches, or 2 loops rather. If it's not possible, or it's getting uneven, that's okay to go through just 1 if you need to. All right, there was that one. Let's skip over here. The great thing about this, the jumbo yarn and the sheepy yarn, just hides a lot of mistakes. Look how cute that is, and so easy. All right, let's skip over here. We're on the last stitch of the green and the red. And we're going to move into the cottontail. Just try to catch those stitches. Make it easy on yourself. Don't worry too much about being perfect. It's homemade, handmade. That is so darn cute, and oh my goodness, so thick and cushy and soft. If you make it for yourself, you're gonna love it. If you make it for someone else, they're going to love it. And it'll be something that you can keep around for years and years. It has that vintage Christmas look by using the crimson red. It's not a super bright red, it's really red. But then that smoky green kind of tones it down. It's not the bright green that you see at Christmas sometimes. I prefer the vintage colors. And then the cottontail is pretty much the same color as the vintage white of this blanket extra yarn and the blanket yarn. It's the same color. It's just the blanket extra is jumbo yarn. I mean, it is jumbo. It works up so fast. This took me maybe 2 hours. Maybe. I had a lot of distractions. I wasn't really keeping up with the time. Excuse me. But it didn't take any time. It just came right together. So just make sure you're keeping these even. There. I should have tied that in a knot. You want this to show because that makes it look like you're just continuing on with your pattern. Okay, I already did that last stitch there, so let's go into the Cottontail. Makes me want to sing that song. Here comes Peter Cottontail. It is very, very soft, like a bunny. Let me move that tail in. I'll flip it inside out and weave those ends in later. Let's see. Now we have to go through 3 thicknesses. The green, the red, and the red. You know what? Hang on just a second. Okay, that'll work. I was afraid this is going to hang over, so I'm not going to stitch into that. I'm going to go right there. Oops. I didn't need to have that under there. Wow, this is just making sure you're in the right spot. Stitch to stitch. This is just above the cottontail, but I'm not going into that stitch. That was really the chain row, that first chain row. All right, pull through all those thicknesses. That's a bunch. And make yourself a single crochet. You can make 2 single crochets in that particular stitch if you want to. I'm not going to bother. We'll move on to the next stitch. And again, you're going through 3 thicknesses here. I hope you can see that. That's a bunch. And the next stitch, make sure you're getting the stitch and not just a tail. That's the last of our 3 thicknesses. Okay, just want to make sure I'm even. It's better to take your time now than to have to pull it all out later. Make sure those are nice and even there. Get your stitches together. Again, there's nothing magical about where this ends up, as long as you're pretty even. This is how it's looking on both sides, and this is just the edge. And we're at the last stitch of those 2 rows, the green and the red. Coming back up on the cottontail. I sometimes forget to look at the camera to make sure you can see what I'm doing. I apologize. I'm pretty new at, not new at crochet, but I'm new at recording. All right, now we're back to the red and green. Red on the bottom now, green on the top. Single crochet. If you can, get 2 stitches in. It's not necessary, I just feel like it's a tighter stitch. I like to have as few holes as possible. It's so cute. And my goal was to have this curving around the top and the bottom, and that is indeed what happened. Let's go into our next stitches. And this way, you don't have to seam the top and the bottom. They're already together. And they're already the cottontail, so it just blends in. I think I'm going to do 3 single crochet here in the corner. I'm going to come up and meet this row of cottontail here with the 1 and a 2 and a 3, just to round that corner. Make it nice and fluffy on the corner. And just slip stitch into the next stitch that you can find. Chain. cut, pull it through, pull it tight. We can weave that little end in. You don't have to because it's already tied off, but I think I want to do that. Now, down at this corner, I did not do the 3 single crochet, and it worked out fine, so I don't think it really matters. I was going to come back and put in more single crochet here. You can if you want to, makes it just a little rounder, but I think I'm just going to come in and weave that in. So there's your bottom edge. And we're going to come over here and do exactly the same thing. I won't bore you with walking through with me. The important thing is that you have this curving around at the bottom and also at the top. Push all your, if you were smart, you would weave in those ends first, but I just like to save that for last. And then this stretches down, so don't worry. It's just really important that you match up your rows. If you want to find a piece of yarn and hold these together, make sure your rows are even before you even start stitching. All right, I'm going to stitch my side together and I'll meet you back. Okay, I finished this side and I think I want to go and make another row. I have plenty of the sheepy left to do that. I want to make one more row on either side because every other part of the sheepy has 2 rows. I just think it will look really good, and I have enough yarn. I did go ahead and do 3 single crochets in this corner and just chain 1 and turn, and I'm going to go down with just 1 more row single crochet. And I also did 3 at this top corner, and because I did 3 in this corner, and I don't know if you remember, I chose not to down here, but when I start here, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 and then come back up with just 1 more row of single crochet, and then I'll be done with that part. And then I'm going to flip it inside out and weave in all my ends. And I'll meet you when I'm ready to show you the completed cover in with the pillow form in. It's a 20-inch pillow form. All right, I'll be back. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you made the blanket and the pillow cover. You don't have to make both, but there was enough left over, so that made sense to me. They're so soft and super cushy. You'll just love it. You'll have it year after year if you keep it. It would also make a great gift. I tried a few buttons, didn't like them. All I ended up doing was using a little bit of the leftover red yarn for the bow. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, give me a like, please. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and you can find more free patterns here. Thanks a lot.